Colin and Viv, if you've not yet participated in that poll that's in the bottom left-hand corner, please feel free to just vote on whichever of those best suits you. It may be that it could be more than one, I guess. So just vote on whichever one of those best suits you. And I'll also give Colin just a little bit of extra time to go through that audio setup wizard. But I imagine of all people, Colin probably doesn't need that long to go through it. Will you be using audio today, Colin, or are you just going to stick to the chat pod only as Viv is, because he's having a few headphone problems? If you could let me know in the chat pod whether you're going to go ahead with the mic or whether you're happy with text-based, we'll move on from there. You're going to use the mic. Okay, brilliant. Do you want to come online now and just do a quick sound check, make sure everything's okay?
Hi, Greg.
And there you are. Good morning, Colin. Thanks for dropping in. Really appreciate it. You dipped at the line. I think you registered at about 10:25. So yeah, really appreciate you coming along. Although it's always with a sense of anxiety when you and the other gurus in this area.
Not at all.
Brilliant. So thank you, Colin. Just a reminder to all, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your mic just to help cut down on any background noise, feedback, anything like that. Really appreciated. We've only expecting 2 this morning. I mentioned this to Viv the other day, because we're just starting a series of live online events. We've only just got an Adobe Connect license. The first event took place on Wednesday of this week, and here we are again, double tapping it so quickly this week. So we haven't got a great audience yet. We haven't really marketed yet, to be honest. And if I'm really honest, it's been about 2 years since I used Adobe Connect. It's been about 2 years since I did anything like this. So you're more than welcome to stalk me, Viv. But I could get an injunction. I will be keeping close tabs on the level of your proximity of your stalking. We haven't done a lot of marketing, and if I'm being really honest, I'm kind of quite pleased these are small audiences at the moment, because I'm still getting my hand in around the whole setting up sessions, events, facilitating them, and all of that. So I'm kind of quite pleased it's quite small at the moment, but I imagine our marketing manager is not so. So let's have a look at these poll results. Let me just broadcast them to you so you can see where we all sit. Both of you have taken part in a Curatr program before. That's brilliant. Thank you for doing that. If you wouldn't mind just dropping into the chat panel which one, maybe you did more than one, which one it was that you were involved in. You don't have to remember the exact title, just the broad subject. And we can see that one of you has admin access to Curatr. And that's brilliant. This session was originally designed, and I hope you saw this in the session description, it's designed for people who have admin access to Curatr, because ideally, I'll show you things that you may be kind of familiar with. You'll go away and you'll put them into practice in the platform. It doesn't have to work like that, though. If you're just wanting to get a general overview of Curatr and how it works to help inform your decisions moving forward, I think this session will still work for you in that way. You just won't have the chance to go away and apply it straight away. There is, of course, always the option to get a sandbox set up for you if you wish to. So I'm going to stop prattling on, and I'm going to get on with the main meat of today's session. I'm just going to change the screen layout ever so slightly. So the session title is How to Create Your First Curatr Course. It might not actually be your first Curatr course, to be honest. If you've already got admin access, you may have experimented and played around. Okay, appreciate that insight, Viv. So let's hopefully be able to help you inform that decision one way or the other by the end of today's session. There are a few things that we're going to look at today. I want to talk about how the organization level settings in Curatr can help to speed up your course build. I think when most people get hold of Curatr, they, understandably, I think, they jump into creating a course or creating their program. That's their starting point. Unfortunately, that means that they're kind of missing a level above that, which is the organization level settings. And if they miss those out, they could actually be making life a little bit harder for themselves than they need be. So we're gonna take half a step back before we dive into creating a course and just show you how you can save a little bit of time. We're going to discuss the various course structures that Curatr provides. Some of these, given I know both of your backgrounds, some of these will be very, very obvious to you. You won't really need them explaining. Others, they're slightly unusual, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking through those. I'm going to look at the basic building blocks of a Curatr course, and I say this to every client I ever demonstrate this to, every training day I facilitate. I say to people, if you can master 3 aspects, if you can master these 3 building blocks, you've got Curatr cracked. That's it. One of the beauties of Curatr is it's quite simple to use once you've mastered these 3 building blocks. And I'm going to stress those as we go through the rest of today's session. I also want to have a look at the social aspects of Curatr. Now, you guys know as well as I do, social is as wide as it is deep, as it is broad. This isn't a session to talk about social learning. It's just to laser focus in on the social aspects of Curatr as opposed to social learning generally. And I'm also going to signpost the online help centre for you as well. You don't have to be a Curatr user to use this help centre. You are more than welcome to go over there and view it anytime you want. If you want to contribute to it, if you want to ask questions and things like that, then you need a login to minimise spam. But to just look at it, to help it inform your decision, Viv, completely free to access, or completely free in terms of it's easy to access, no login required. So those were the 4 or 5 things that I promised that I was going to cover before you registered for this event in the spiel on the Adobe Catalog page. I just want to pause for breath now and check in with you guys, either verbally or in the text chat panel. Is that what you were hoping to get out of today's session? Is that what you signed up for? If it's not, one of us is in the wrong place. I really hope it's not me. If you want to open your mic up and explain anything else that you wanted to get out of today's session, given it's such a small audience, I'm sure we can accommodate that.
Hi, Craig. It's Colin. Last year I think you took me through it, and it's taken me a year to get rid of all the other work I had to do, and I'm now back ready to create a series of courses, or at least one to start off with. So I'm really just wanting this session, the reason I'm here really is just to refresh my memory again of you know, what it can do and how you go about it. So that's fine.
That's absolutely fine, Colin. And of course, I knew you were the guy that had admin access, so that's absolutely fine. I think a combination of what you already have seen, today's session, and of course the help centre that I'm going to signpost right now. In fact, I'm going to drop a link into the chat panel, but I've also got it available as a link that you can go to at the end of the session. I think a combination of all those 3, and of course the fact that you know where I live, you know how to get hold of me, will help you to brush off those cobwebs from last year. So very happy to have you along. And what about yourself, Viv? Is this what you're looking for? Is this what you're hoping to get out of it? You've mentioned you'd like to get a sense of how easy it is to use, and I hopefully will achieve that during today's session. Just going to change the screen layout once more. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. I always have something of a sense of foreboding when I'm going to do this, because several times I do this, it kind of drops out on me and it disappears. So hopefully that won't happen today. So what I'm sharing with you right now is just the front page of the Help Centre. We're not going to dive into this in any detail, I promise you. I just wanted to show you that it exists. I wanted to show you that we have 3 products, of which Curatr is obviously one of them, and that there are a range of articles, guides, videos, how-tos contained within here. I built this, so I am pretty damn confident in saying that this will achieve what you need it to achieve if you are a brand new, novice, inexperienced, first-time user. This will get you from knowing nothing to having a course built and getting users enrolled on it and facilitating the course. There are, of course, always advanced options. There are always ways that you never kind of capture on paper or on screen. This doesn't necessarily go into that. That's what I'm here for. That's what the rest of the team at HT2 are here for. I'm really confident this will get you started though. Very confident indeed. So let's just dip out of the Help Centre now and let me go and actually have a look at the back end of Curatr. So one of the things I committed to covering off today was talking about the organisation level settings. Most people dive into this button here, courses, and most people then start to build their course because let's be honest, that's what they've bought Curatr for. That's what they're trialling it for. If you do that, you're missing out on the organisation level settings here, the settings that apply outside of any course. Now, just looking down this left-hand tab, and I'm not going to open these up, guys. You know, this is something you can explore in your own time or we can follow up on afterwards. But there's a whole range of options down the left-hand side. Open badges, customizing the look and feel, adding tags, activating services, things like extra security, XAPI, CSS, things like that. High-level reports, high-level moderation. There's even an e-commerce function here. I'm not going to go into these. This is something you could pick up in the Help Centre. What I am going to touch on though is this Edit Organisation button, the very top button, the one that is active by default. We can see in here that we can create a welcome message, not for the course. We're not creating a course at the moment. This is just about the site itself. You can create a welcome message. You can choose whether you want to allow public registrations or not. You can apply images to that site. Remember, not the course. We can apply images later on. This is the site level, the highest level. We can choose how we want to award badges if we wish to. We can link groups. Again, it's slightly more advanced feature. The thing I want to focus on is this default game settings here. I always advise people before they start to build a course, have a think about how you want the gamified aspects of Curatr to work. I know that both of you know Curatr, but let me just recap. Curatr is a gamified social learning platform. It's not a game in itself. It doesn't look like a game. It doesn't really feel like a game. And we're quite pleased about that. We don't want to go down the game route. We use a gamification approach that awards points based upon people's behaviours, which is a clever use of gamification. And we're not the only ones doing it, of course. So I would imagine in your Curatr courses, you want people to look at content. You want people to comment. You want people to have conversations. You want people to contribute back in because it's a social learning platform. So therefore, why not give people points based on looking at stuff, viewing stuff, reading stuff, commenting, having conversations, contributing? They're the behaviours we want to encourage. So let's give some points for it. So this is what I do. These are my default settings, and I'll explain why they're set like this. I give 1 point for looking at content, because in my opinion, it's quite a passive activity. It doesn't really take a lot of effort to look at something, read something, watch something, listen to something. If people comment upon that object, that takes a bit more effort. They have to think about the question. They have to come up with an answer. They have to be brave enough to type that answer into the comments thread for other people to see. So I give people 5 points. More effort, more points. When people contribute back into the course, and what I mean by contribute is not just a comment, maybe they're uploading a video or a file, maybe they're recording a video using Curatr's inbuilt webcam recording feature, maybe they've written a blog post and they're linking to that, something that takes even more effort, I give people more points for that. So it's quite a simple basis of more effort, more points, lesser effort, fewer points. There's also the ability to put a timer in here. This is a default timer that says when somebody has had that screen loaded for, in this case, 30 seconds, they get the viewpoint. There's no part of Curatr that actually knows if you've looked at that object. Nobody's doing any eye scanning, nobody's reading people's minds or anything like that. It's a fairly basic feature that says, if this screen has been loaded for X period of time, we will assume, and I get the problems with making assumptions, believe me, we'll assume that they've looked at it and award them the point. So these are my default settings. Why am I showing you this without jumping into a course? If I apply these now at this level, every single course and piece of content I add to that course from now on will pick up these default settings, saving me time when I come to build a course. Now, even though these pick up the default settings, you can change them later on. You can change them at an individual level. I rarely do that, if I'm honest, but you could if you wanted to. So spending a few seconds or minutes now thinking about this and applying these settings, you're going to reap the benefit 10 times over when you actually come to build the course yourself. And I'm just going to click the save button there. So I'm going to pause for breath, and I'm going to come back to you guys and ask if you have any questions, anything that you want me to go through. Let me just go back to the Adobe Connect screen and pick up any questions that you've got at this stage. No questions coming in, guys? That's okay. I'm not pushing you for the questions.
Sorry, Greg. I was sort of flummoxed because the screen shares says nothing being shared. So I was waiting for...
Throughout the whole thing?
It just says nothing being shared.
Oh, that's because I've stopped sharing. I've come back into here, into the main room. But hopefully you could actually see it when it was being shared. Is that correct, Colin?
Oh, yeah, I saw it perfectly. Yeah, I didn't really understand the gamification part of it, which I now do. It's fantastic. Yeah, I like that a lot. Really.
Yeah, it's not a game. You know, I see lots of examples of e-learning that's called gamified, and a lot of it, not all of it, I'm not saying that, but a lot of it, it looks like a game. It's got that kind of racetrack looking view. It looks like a board game.
It's the wrong word for it, really, isn't it? It's not gamified. It's like...
It's a game. Call it what it is. You've made a game. You haven't necessarily created a gamified learning experience. Not always. There are exceptions, of course. I'd stress that. But yeah,
it's more of reward for contribution thing, isn't it?
Yes, but that is in gamification truest sense. That is it. Gamification can mean lots of different things depending on your context. If you look at loyalty cards in coffee shops, that's gamification. That they're rewarding a behaviour for you coming in and buying coffee with them, and that's the kind of approach we take in Curatr, which is, it doesn't look like a game at all, but we're rewarding you if you demonstrate the behaviours that the designer wants, which is probably going to be looking at content, having a conversation about it, contributing your own stuff.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, Colin. Thank you. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it's resonating with you, what I'm saying. Good stuff. Let me go back to sharing my screen. So this was the site level settings. Remember what I said, they will save you time in the future, without a doubt. Let's get stuck into building a course. I'm going to click on the courses tab, roughly top left-hand corner. And in this occasion, I will see a whole list of courses. We can see 51 courses here. This is in our beta site. It's likely that you would have 0 courses the very first time you build one, because of course there's nothing in there. Top right hand corner, there's a button that's called New Course. I'm going to click on that. And I have a very, very simple, at this stage, box appear that's asking me to input some information. Now, I'm not going to spend, guys, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, I'm not going to spend a whole amount of time explaining what the hell you type in the description box or how it should be worded or anything like that. I'm just going to type in gobbledygook, to be honest, because You know, you guys know what to put in that. This isn't a case of telling you how to craft a course description. And I'm probably going to adopt that approach for other parts. I want to show you the process rather than the obvious 101 thinking that I know that you guys are aware of. So let's just give it a call. I'm just going to call it the test, and I'm going to call it the 3rd of the 3rd, 17, today's date. When I click in the alias box, you'll see that it auto-populates that. That is part of the course URL. If you don't like that, you could amend it. You could get rid of the 17 and just call it the 3rd of the 3rd. You'd then type in the course description in here. And as I said, I'm just going to type gobbledygook in there. This is the course description that would appear on the site homepage. So it needs to be something that's going to grab people, entice them, tell them what's in it for them, but nothing too exhaustive. We then have the ability to change 2 settings here, the visibility of the course. You can either set it to public or secret. Now, public does not mean the general public. Public means that it will be visible on your Curatr site's homepage. In other words, if people have got access to that homepage, they can see the course. Some clients want the ability to make their courses secret. If you can imagine a situation where maybe some managers in the business are undertaking some form of remedial training or some form of development training, you wouldn't necessarily want everyone to know that that's taking place. You might want to make the course secret. It will still behave in exactly the same way as any other course. It's just that Joe Blogs can't see it. The manager would need to be invited onto the course or registered for the course. I'm going to change this back to public for now. We can choose whether we want self-enrollment or not. This would allow people to either enroll on the course, as I've ticked now, or if it's unticked, they would need to request a place on the course. You might not want thousands of people on your course if you really only want maybe 50 to 100 people. So you can limit the numbers by doing that. And you can also create a start date for the course and even a start time for the course as well if you're operating internationally. I'm just going to keep today's date, midnight last night, and I'm going to click submit. You'll notice that the screen has jumped around a little bit now, and we're starting to get more into the meat of creating a Curatr course. I'm going to click on the settings tab, which is on the left-hand side. And you'll notice now that some of the information on this screen has been picked up from the previous screen. It's carried it through, it's translated it for me. There's the course title, there's the course description. It remembered that I wanted it public. It remembered that I didn't want to allow self-enrollment. Let's actually tick that. And it's also remembered the alias and the start date time of the course as well. So quite a lot of that information has been pulled through. There are various options on this screen, and a lot of them are self-explanatory, so I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time talking them through. What I did commit to do, though, was to discuss the various course structures, and that's what this drop down here is all about. Let me explain what these mean in slow time. There is a classic game type view. For those of you that remember Curatr when it first came out, it was around concentric circles. It looked a little bit like a dartboard or an archery target. We still have that course layout. We still have that game type. I rarely recommend it to people, though, if I'm being really, really honest. I rarely recommend it. It doesn't always play nicely with mobile devices, and it doesn't have the same range of features because of its layout that the other course types have. So I know how to use it. If it's the right thing for the client, then it's the right thing for the client. My advice would always be, it's probably not your best starting point. It's probably worth considering one of the other 3. So let's have a look at those. We've got a linear course type. This is really obvious, guys. If you've got a 5-level course, you have to go through level 1 to get to 2, 2 to get to 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. It behaves in a linear fashion, really obvious. The other side of that coin is a branching course. a non-linear course. You have a 5-level course, you have 5 different areas within that course, but you don't want to lock it down. You want to treat people like adults. You want to allow them to go wherever they want, whenever they want. Maybe they will go 1 to 5. Maybe they'll go 5 to 1. Maybe they'll just dip in and do whatever it is that they need to solve their problem. That's where a non-linear course would answer the question. There is something of an in-between though. There's something of a hybrid, and that's what we call a branching course. There are some situations you might imagine you're working in a corporate or somewhere like that, where you want or need people to start at a certain point. Maybe they all need to understand the rules of using Curatr. Maybe they all need to hear the message from the CEO about this leadership program. Maybe they need to understand the health and safety considerations that this program relates to. Maybe you want people to start at level 1, but then you want to allow them to go wherever they want and go in any order that they want, be more free form. This is where a branching course or a hybrid course would help to satisfy those 2 options. So those are your course types. Classic, feel free to experiment with it, but it's not my favourite. I often avoid it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, linear, non-linear, any damn order that they please. Branching, you make them start at a certain point, then they can go free form and behave however they want to after that. So those are the game types. I'm going to pause there because these often lead to questions more so than anything else on this screen. So just want to pause and allow you to open your mics up or contribute something in the chat panel if you've got any questions at this stage.
Craig, it's Colin again. My instinct is to go on the linear route because that's the way I've always developed courses. But if you take, say, a subject like how to take video, that is definitely one where they could dip in and out depending on their level. So if they're a photographer, they would not need me to tell them all about framing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I like that, and I'm definitely going to explore the branching one. That's really good. I like that. But I think you answered the question, but I couldn't quite remember. Can you specify which one they must take first, like the platform? And once they've done that, then they can go on. Is that right?
You can indeed. Yeah. If you had, let's say you had a level called Introduction to Videography. Let's just assume it's that, and then all of your other levels, the more advanced things, you could say this Introduction to Videography is my starting point. That's going to be your starting point as well, and then after that, you can go framing, lighting, audio, rendering, any order that you want, but you will start at this point. So you can choose which order they start in or where they start. The point you raised, Colin, about people, how they navigate as well, is that you've raised a really good point there. And there's an interesting anecdote I've got from last year. I created a course that only lasted 48 hours. It was a 2-day MOOC, and we ran it for some research purposes. That course was non-linear. People could go through that course in any order they wished. What we actually saw was that people behaved in a very linear fashion. They went from left to right, from top to bottom. They behaved in a linear fashion despite the course being non-linear. So I always say to clients, you might want to consider a non-linear course because it ticks the box in terms of giving people some freedom. It ticks the box in terms of treating people like adults, but it also, you can almost guarantee inside that people will still behave in a linear fashion. So if you need to, and I know you don't fit into this category, Colin, but if you worked in a business that felt that people would go all over the place in any order, we've got some research to show that's in our case, that wasn't what happened. People still behaved in a linear fashion. So I would err towards the non-linear or the branching, just because people kind of, most people, well, a lot of people are programmed to behave in a linear fashion, even if the course isn't set up like that. So that could be something worth considering. Viv, I noticed that you've raised your hand. Was that to ask something, or was it were you just clicking around? Now, Viv doesn't have his mic working, and I can't see chat in this Adobe Connect when I'm screen sharing, quite bizarrely, which is pretty poor, I think. Surely you should be able to see the chat if you're screen sharing in the little pop-up, but it appears that I can't. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And of course, the irony will be that maybe Viv didn't have a question after all. But just over to yourself, Viv, if you could let me know in the chat panel, was there a question? Because I saw that you'd raised your hand. Yeah, over to you, Viv. I can just see that Viv keeps raising his hand, and I'm just curious as to whether he wanted to ask something or wanted me to pause or open his mic up. No? Okay, I'm not seeing anything appear in the chat panel, Viv, so I'm assuming it was just an error with you raising your hand. Let me go back to sharing the screen. The other things that appear under the display options, you'll notice that these three options that are highlighted in blue, they've been highlighted by default. My advice would be to leave them as they are if you're just starting. Don't fiddle with them, don't touch them. The reason being, they're set to default for good reason. Our research and experience shows they're the best layouts for people in terms of guaranteeing ease of use, user interaction, social commentary is increased if you leave them at the default. You can experiment and swap them around. And I always say to people, build your course and then change the layout whilst you're doing your testing. See what it looks like to the end user once you've changed the layout. But for now, I would always advise leaving them set at default. You can close the date on a course if you wish. If you only wish to have it available for a certain period of time, there's a close date option here, which you could select. You can add some imagery to the course. Now, this isn't anything to do with content. You're just adding imagery to the course page itself. The individual levels and the pieces of content, you can add more imagery when you get to these. You are just saying, here's my course, this is what it's called, and here's a pretty picture to represent it. It's nothing more granular than that. You can set up some email options so that if you're going to send emails from Curatr, which you can do, this would show who that email was coming from. You can provide a completion message, a congratulations message, and you can also upload a PDF template that Curatr will partially complete for an individual once they finish that course. And then we've got some advanced options, and look at this. All of those points that we allocated at the organization level settings, they've been carried through to this course. I'm not having to change them at a course level. So what have we done so far, guys? We've gone to the organization level and we have said, this is how I want all of my courses to behave. We've then created a course. We've called it Test 030317, and we've decided that we want it to behave in a non-linear fashion, and we've made it look pretty, and we've applied a few more settings. All it is at the moment is an empty box. There's no content, there's no structure, there's no social commentary. It's just an empty box at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding content. Now, if you remember back to the opening part of this session, I talked about building blocks in Curatr. And I talked about the fact that if you can master 3 building blocks, you've mastered Curatr, 99.9% of Curatr. And those 3 building blocks are levels, content, and questions, or levels, objects, and questions as Curatr, to use Curatr's language. The first thing we notice is that Curatr's already given me a level. The minimum a course can have is one level and one object. It's got to have something in it. So it gives you the first level. Think of a level as a chapter in a book, or a section in a movie, or a chapter in a DVD. It all kind of relates usually to the same subject. So let's use Colin's example that he spoke about earlier on. Let's say that this level is about lighting. It could be anything, of course, but I'm just going to go for lighting. That's the title of this level, lighting. We can choose a difficulty rating. What that means is, how much of this level do people have to do before that level is complete? That's in its simplest terms, that's what it means. Do they have to do all of it, 100%? Do they have to do very little of it, 10%? Maybe they have to do 3/4 of it, 75, or maybe they only have to do half of it. This doesn't mean that once they've done that 50% that they can't do the rest. It doesn't mean that at all. It simply means that the algorithm that Curatr uses would say, once you've done 50% of this level, you've technically finished the level, but you're more than welcome to do more. I often leave this set at 75, between 50 and 75% is my advice. There are occasions in some businesses where it has to be set at 100% for very good reason. But the sorts of courses that I run and I'm involved in, that's not the case. So I've left it at 75%. When do we want this level to open? Well, my advice would always be your first level should really open when your course opens. So that was today, wasn't it? We set the time for today, so let's make sure that that level opens today as well. Of course, when you build future levels, you might want that to open in a week's time, or a month's time, or 2 months' time. We can give that level a description, and we can give that level some nice imagery. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to waste time by showing you guys how to upload an image onto a website. Pretty sure you've got that mastered. See what's happened here? We've now got a level called lighting. We've now got a level description. Admittedly, it's gobbledygook. And we can just repeat that. So if you wanted to know how quickly or how easy it is to use Curatr, I'm going to add a new level by clicking new level. I'm going to call this audio. I want this to be 60%. I want this to start a week today, the 10th. There's the description for the level. Adding some images, hit save. I've just added another level to Curatr, and I'll do one more. Let's use this about editing. Let's call this level editing. Let's change that to 80%. We want that to start, oh dear, we want that to start 2 weeks today. Today being the 3rd of March. 3rd of March. Crikey, we're a whole year out there. The 3rd of March. I was a little confusing. It's because I was a year out. 17, so that's 2 weeks today. There's the level description. More pretty images. Hit save. So this is one of the building blocks to master. And I hope you'll agree, actually, it's not a great deal to master. You fill in half a dozen boxes with some quite obvious information. Click save, and you've added another level. I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to add one more, calling it hosting. 50%. Start date, 3 weeks today. Another description, some pretty images, and click save. And there's the 4th level created there. So I just want to pause at this stage because creating levels in Curatr is an important part of it. It's one of the 3 key building blocks. As always, I want to pause and just come back to you guys to ask if you've got any questions at this stage.
On the levels, no, that's perfectly, that's easy to understand. I just got one question about what we were talking about previously, about the type of course. Could I set up a course as, say, linear, and then I might decide, let's see what it works like as a hybrid or a branching one. Can I do that? Hello?
Hey guys, I'm back again. Apologies for that. Are you both still online? You both seem to be in the attendees pod.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I can see that. My apologies for that, guys. It just abruptly ended. Something I'll need to pick up with Collaborate after the session. A bit worrying. So let me go back to where we were. You were asking the question, Colin, about can you create a linear course, and then it dropped out. So please, if you could pick up from there.
Right. Yeah, what I was thinking of is, okay, I'm going to create a linear course, but I want to also try it out to see what it's like as a branching course.
Okay.
Is it easy to do that?
Absolutely it is. So let's assume we've built our course now. We've not quite, not by a long stretch, but let's assume that we have. We can go back to settings. We can go to display options, and we can change it from non-linear to linear.
Yeah.
And click.
Right.
So you can then, I always say, build your course, get it finished, and then have a look at it from an end user's perspective. And then change it and have a look at it as a non-linear or as a branching or even as a classic. As long as your course hasn't gone live yet, you are not going to run into any problems at all doing that. You do run into problems if your course is live because people are kind of used to it behaving one way, and then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, it's behaving completely differently. It's behaving how it's supposed to behave because you've changed the settings in the back end. So as long as you bear that in mind to do all your testing before it goes live, you can very easily just go and change the game type to be something else. You can experiment around with it.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
So we've got four levels here. I talked about 3 building blocks. We've ticked off one of them, which is what you're seeing now, the levels. Now let's add a piece of content to this level by clicking New Object, New Piece of Content. It's given me an option. Do I want to choose from the library? You guys won't have a library yet because you've got no content in Curatr. Do we want to select a user contribution where the participants contribute something in? I'd never advise that as your first object. You're putting a lot on the part of the participant here without them really knowing how the platform works. My advice would be, first starting point, click on New Resource. Just give your screen a few seconds and you'll see that you've got a range of resources to pick from here that you could select. I'm going to be quite lazy. I'm just going to pick the URL option. I'm going to paste into that URL. I'm just quickly dashed over to the Wistia site, which I know Colin and I are a big fan of. I've just picked up the Wistia Learning Centre URL. I've come back into Curatr and I'm going to paste it in. And you'll notice that the name and the description have already automatically been picked up from the URL. So I'm going to just change this ever slightly. I'm just going to say article Wistia Hub. And I'm going to add a little bit of extra blurb. Of course, this is nonsense, but you get the idea. And I'm also going to say to people, this is going to take you 5 minutes to read this, because I always like to give people an informed choice about how long is this going to take out of their life. If they've got 10 minutes to their next meeting, they might look at this article. If this article is actually 25 minutes long, they're not going to look at it now. They're going to look at it later. So it's about giving them informed choice. I'm going to hit the save button. And you'll notice that this right-hand column now has picked up the name of the article. It's picked up the description. It's picked up the time duration that I popped in. We talked about Curatr being a source. So that's the second thing. 3 building blocks of Curatr. Adding levels, we've done that. Adding objects, we've done that. Now, I've made it look simpler than it might be because there's all sorts of different objects. There's embed codes, YouTube videos, uploads, XAPI, storyline, blah, 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 blah. I picked the easiest one. The process is exactly the same though. The process doesn't change at all. It's just how much there is in that part of that process that will differ. Maybe you want to ask a question about this particular article. So maybe this article is all about lighting. So we want to ask a question. Have you ever experimented with 3-point lighting? If so, how did it go? If not, why not? No, some typos in there, get rid of those. So I'm asking a question here. It's not the best question in the world, okay? I'll readily admit to that. You are going to be able to give a lot more time and thought about what is it that you want people to talk about in relation to that article. I've just typed any old nonsense in there. We can choose an icon that goes with that particular, and this was an article. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I've got some folders saved, some PNGs. It was an article. And you'll notice that when I click save, that dinosaur changes to an icon of an article. It could be a video. We've got a whole range of icons available in our help center for you to use. Game settings. You've seen these figures before, guys. These are the figures that we set up at the organization level. These are the figures that carried through into the course level. Same figures have carried through into the object. So this is what I talked about when I said you can save a lot of time by putting those default settings in at the organization level. I don't need to change anything now. In fact, I don't even need to open that particular option up because I know what those defaults are. I'm only doing it now to show you that they're there. And I can also add some tags to this object. Tags are useful to add if you are using badges within Curatr, and they're also useful to add if you're going to hook Curatr up to a learning record store such as Learning Locker. They'll give you more granularity of your reporting. It's an article, it's in the getting started level, and it was an article on lighting. And I'm going to click save. In a nutshell, guys, and I don't wish to dumb Curatr down, that's it. That's Curatr. Creating a course, adding a level, adding content to a level, adding a question, the social part of it, which I've added down here. Now, I've made each of those look quite easy because I admit I use this day in, day out. I would say, in my experience, the hardest part of what we've done, the hardest parts of what we've done is selecting good content. That's nothing to do with Curatr. That's your own curation or creation skills involved in that. Getting good content into Curatr. That's one of the hardest parts. The other hardest part is what I've highlighted on the screen here. It's asking good questions. The very first time I ever built a Curatr course, I asked this question. Please tell us about your own MOOC experiences in the past, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That was my question. I thought that was a good question because it's an open question, it's inviting open responses, it's getting people to relive a personal experience. I thought it was a great question. However, about an hour into the course, I realised it wasn't a good question. You couldn't answer that question if you'd never done a MOOC before. You couldn't answer it. The question was, tell us about your own MOOC experiences in the past, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm assuming everyone's done a MOOC, and they haven't, of course. So it wasn't a great question. So it can be, we all know the power of questions, and we all know how easy it is to ask a bad question and tricky it is to ask a good one. That's why I'm saying of all the parts of Curatr, asking a good question is probably one of the trickier parts. But again, that's nothing to do with Curatr. That's your own instructional design skills, your own questioning skills. And I know that you guys have got good ones, but not everyone will have. and I'm going to click save. What I want to do is I want to jump out of this course because we've just been messing around. We've just been dumping anything in there at the moment. And I want to take you to a course that I ran last year. It lasted for 367 days, hence my hairline disappearing and grey lines appearing in my beard. But let me show you this page of the course here. We've just done the same thing. If you remember, we were on a page that looked very similar to this. It had these horizontal grey blocks. It had a grey block called lighting, audio, hosting and editing, I think. This is a real course that's obviously had more time spent on it, and we can see all the different levels. When we open a level, let's look at this one, we can see that it's no longer just an article about Wistia, but it's an article on the history of AI. It's a video on the future of learning. That's Donald Clark. Another article, a blog, a video, some meetup search results. This took quite a bit of time to build because it was a year-long course. But the process for creating it was exactly the same process that I've just quickly talked you guys through. Let's have a look at this at the front end so you get an understanding as to what it looks like at the front end. This is the branching course that you've been asking about, Colin. This was where people, you can see the imagery now, it looks prettier than just having the default imagery in there. There's the course description. Remember when I just typed any old gobbledygook into the cell? That's a proper course description. If we look in the welcome level, we can see a proper level description. I just typed nonsense in when I was doing the demo for you a few minutes ago. A bit more time spent here. We can see 3 objects. Let's ignore the video here from Ben. Let's play it for a few seconds so you get to see his mug.
Hi, my name.
There's Ben. Ignore that. Let's pretend that's Wistia's article from their learning centre. Here's a question up here. Let's ignore that. Let's pretend that's the question I asked about what's your own experience of 3-point lighting? How's it gone in the past? If you haven't used it, why haven't you used it? People then respond to that question here, and we can now start to see this is quite light touch. This is the introductory objects. It's never any great meaningful conversation. It's just about people introducing themselves. But that's what a real course would look like once you've gone through the steps and the process that I've just demoed to you for the last 45 minutes. That's what a real course would look like. This is a branching course, Colin. I said to people, they must do this level first, the getting started level, that happens to have 3 sub-levels in it. It doesn't have to, it could just have 1. Once they've done this introductory level, then they could have free reign and go into any of these. So let's assume this is called getting started. Let's assume it's called introduction to videography. They have to do that level. And when they've done that, then they can access your audio, lighting, editing, hosting, and all of the other sub-subjects that go under videography. That's what a real course looks like. Of course, we didn't have the time to build that today in this demo. That's why I've very quickly taken you through the steps to build a course that we've been building today, which is called Test 030317. So I'm going to pause for breath again, guys. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back to the main part of Adobe Connect and come back into the main room. Here I am. So I obviously want to spend a bit of time now asking you guys for any questions, fielding any questions that you've got. It could be of anything. Is that what, Viv, I'm so sorry. I very rarely see what it looks like from the other user's perspective, and I didn't realise that once I screen shared that I stripped your chat window away. I feel very embarrassed now, but obviously I've learnt a valuable lesson. I need to think around that because quite a lot of our sessions will involve screen sharing, and I don't want to preclude the people that don't have a microphone. So please accept my apologies for that, and hopefully you haven't forgot the questions that you wanted to ask. Fingers crossed. So I'm going to open the mic up now, which it always has been. I'm going to open the chat box up finally for Viv, and I'm going to try and answer any questions, challenges, queries that you've got. It could be about something that we've covered. It could be about something that we haven't covered that you're interested in. So free form Q&A now, guys.
Craig, one question I have is, all the objects that you had listed there,
yes,
is there one where you could, let's say that during a certain part of the course, you want everybody to get online together to discuss something? Is there a way of doing that?
there isn't, you know, and the way, first of all, I think it's a good idea, and it's been echoed by a few other people. Not necessarily a synchronous chat. They often say, is there anywhere that we could have a asynchronous general discussion area? And there isn't. The way that we get around it is, or the way that you could get around it, is to use something like Twitter, to use a hashtag and get the conversation outside of Curatr. But what you could do is you could set up that Twitter hashtag in advance, which you would do, of course. You could then embed the Twitter search page for that hashtag as an object. So people could actually participate from it within Curatr, but actually they're participating it via Twitter. It just happens to be inside Curatr. And if you look in the help center, if you search for advanced content, I've got some ideas in there about how you can use Curatr in a non-standard way. There isn't the particular example that you've talked about an asynchronous live chat, but you'll be able to kind of use the same principle and do something like that inside Curatr. So I'd suggest you finding a synchronous live chat type of tool and embedding that in Curatr.
Right. My other question, I don't want to sort of hog it because I think Viv's got some questions. The other question I was going to ask was, during the course, after every bit of every module of the course, especially when we're going into actually taking video, I want them to do a 1 minute video on this, or, you know, a 2 minute video on showing me you understand the rule of thirds, for instance. That's just a quick example. Does Curatr have the place where they can upload their contribution?
They do indeed. Let me go back to screen sharing. I'll get to your question, Viv, I promise. I just want to show Colin this example here. If you remember when we were creating a course, one of the options was when you add an object, you could add a user contribution object. And I said I would never advise getting people to do that right at the start.
Yeah.
So what you could do is you could add a user contribution object. This page you're looking at now is a user contribution object. Here are my instructions to people. They would be probably very similar to your instructions, except you'd be talking that you want them to demonstrate the rule of thirds.
Yeah.
What they could then do is they could click on the upload button and they could upload their file in.
Right.
Or they could click on the link symbol and they could enter a YouTube or any video URL, maybe a YouTube or a Vimeo one, and it would send people to YouTube. They could even click on this webcam button, and I think this is too basic for what you're looking for, but it might be interesting to Viv. They could click on the record from webcam, and the webcam would actually take what they're saying, and I'm just waving at the webcam now, I'm saying hello, and I'm demonstrating the rule, hopefully very poorly, the rule of thirds there. So you could activate their webcam and upload that. But I think if your guys are videographers that you're going to have on the course, this is too basic. It doesn't have a feature set that you'd want, but it might be interesting to know. So to answer your question, yes. If you want people to put stuff back into Curatr as evidence, as part of their portfolio, and allow you and others to comment on it, to give feedback, that's possible. I'm going to stop recording this, and I'm just going to click on Rachel's big plan here. She used her webcam, And there's Rachel's video.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Burnham, and this.
So that's a webcam video. You can probably tell that, but that could be a high quality video that they've uploaded, or that could be a video that they've linked to on YouTube. And as you can see over on the right hand side, I've given Rachel some feedback and some congratulatory messages for doing so there.
Yeah, brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, good question, Colin. So Viv was asking about the social learning MOOC. Which social learning MOOC in particular, Viv? Because we've ran several. We've got one running right now with Julian Stodd. We've also ran a few in the past, but they're kind of archived now. They're not really live. If you could let me know which one you make. The Julian one. The Julian one is a non-linear. So you're quite right. It's a non-linear course. You can go into that course and you can start at the end, in the middle, at the beginning. You can do whatever the hell you want in there. That is a non-linear example. So if you're in that course, which it sounds like you are, that's a non-linear type of experience. If it was linear, you'd have to finish level 1 before you could get to level 2. And even if you'd finished level 1, if Julian had said he doesn't want level 2 to start until Monday, you'd be sat twiddling your thumbs until Monday. So there's two ways of controlling progress. You can have a linear course whereby the moment you finish one level, you get access to the next. Or you could have a linear course where you have to finish a level and then wait for the next one to become available. They've both got their places. They're both absolutely the right thing for some clients and not for others. But it's a good question, and I'm pleased that you're in there, and I'm pleased that you've spotted that that is a non-linear course. So we've overrun ever so slightly. I need to obviously refine my timings around this for the future, so my apologies for that. I'm going to stay online. I don't have another call for another 25 minutes. So if you have questions or want to see other things, I'm going to be around to help you do that. Just before you leave, it would be really, really great if you could just click on the T symbol on this whiteboard that you see on the screen. And if you could just type in what your key takeaways are from this session, that'd really help me understand how it's gone down with you and what resonated with you, maybe what didn't resonate with you, but I hoped would do. It'd be great if you could just tell me what your key takeaway is from this session on the whiteboard. I've also dragged in a couple of pods below that, some links that you might find interesting about people using Curatr and how they've used it, a link to our help centre, which I promised earlier on, and there's also an overview of what we do at HT2 Labs. It touches on Curatr, probably doesn't give you the depth that you're going to need for what you're looking at Curatr for, but it might just be a useful overview. So if you want to select any of those and open them up or download them, you'd be more than welcome to do so. Curatr seems pretty. We try our best. It's quite interesting. I had this conversation with a bank the other day. I've seen some courses that look brilliant, really, really well, great graphics, great imagery, but the structure and the content and the questions is it's not the same, shall we say? Let's be polite. It's not the same. I've also seen some courses that look like I've done the graphics. They look pretty scrappy, pretty ropey, but actually the instructional design below that is really effective. And I think there's something there about first impressions count, and if your site looks rubbish, it can put people off. Similarly, I think we've all perhaps been wooed by things that look brilliant in the past, and once you actually get into them, they're not great. So I agree that the visual aspect has an important part to play. Well, I'm pleased you've picked some things up there, guys. You always know where we are. Viv, if you ever need a sandbox setting up to play around with or to demonstrate to a client, get in contact with me. I can put you in contact with the right people to get that sandbox set up. We did the same for Colin last year, and he's still got access to that. And of course, for yourself, Viv's gone. And of course, for yourself, Colin, if you need more than what the help centre is able to provide you, Viv's just popped back in again. He's keeping me on my toes. Viv, I was just saying there when you dropped out briefly, if you need a sandbox setting up, no obligation, no charge, of course. If you need a sandbox setting up, drop me a line. I'll put you in contact with the right people, and we'll get that moving forward. And Colin, I know you've got access to a sandbox, or you've got access to a site, actually. If you need more than what the Help Centre can provide you, then you know where I am. Don't be afraid of getting in touch. I'll mull around for a bit longer, guys, like I said I would, but other than that, okay, no worries, Viv, let me contact you after this, get through the form to fill in, and you know, you'll get a sandbox set up very quickly and get contacted by the right people. Thank you, Viv, thank you, Colin. Once you wish to leave, close the browser window down or go up into the top left-hand corner, click Meeting, and then exit to the relevant option under the drop-down. I'll wait here until you've all gone. I'll turn the lights out when I leave.